Well, my friends, as we head into this Memorial Day weekend, I hope and I pray that you get some time off to rest and refresh yourself, restorative things to get you ready because you deserve it. And even if you're working, I pray you get just some time to yourself to do something that will restore yourself and grab a little bit of rest in the middle of this. I want to pose a question. What do you do? What do you do when you fail? I mean, you blow it big time. I mean, we all fail. We all misstep. Um, what do you do? How do you handle that? You know, I talk to leaders all the time, and I find it interesting that people will look to me as a leader and see some of the things that I've done and the success that I've done, all by the grace and goodness of God, for sure. But when I talk to leaders, you can't be a leader or talk to leaders without bringing in failure. Isn't that amazing? I talked to a man that is uh, a major player in a company that is worldwide. And when he was just a regional manager, he said he'd been doing it for 19 years. And he told me, he said, every major lesson I learned came from a mistake that I made. And I thought to myself, wow, that's saying something. This guy is saying he would have never had these lessons had he not blown it. And in 19 years, I'm sure there were many successes. And couched behind every one of those successes was a failure. It's powerful. It's powerful. Does failure have to be final? Now we know failure can be final, but does it have to be? And I'll pose this story for you. Two men at the same dinner receive almost the same word, a prophecy, if you will, a promise, if you will. And yet, one handled it one way and it was final, the other handled it another way and was restored. It's the Last Supper of Jesus. Now, we've all probably seen the picture. We've all seen the picture of the Last Supper. And, Jesus is in the center and everybody's all around him, his disciples. And what the Hebrew historic account tells us is that Jesus is speaking to everybody there, to his disciples. It's very personal. It's the last time they'll be together before the crucifixion. And then after that, the resurrection. And he says, one of you here will betray me. And it's Judas Iscariot, the man that we know basically betrayed Jesus for 30 pieces of silver. And so he looks at Judas and he says, I know you're the one that's going to do it. So what you're going to do it quickly. So Judas goes and he prepares those that are coming to arrest Jesus. And they find Jesus in the garden after the dinner. And Judas walks up to him and acknowledges him. And they recognize who he is. And they take Jesus into custody. And then later, when Judas finds out that Jesus is being beaten and scourged, and They're preparing him for this crucifixion. Judas says, I don't want to do this. I don't want to go through with it. So he runs back to a group known as the Sanhedrin. These are the people he made the deal with. I'll turn Jesus over to you for 30 pieces of silver. And he says, I don't want the money. I don't want to do this. And they say, we don't care. We've got what we want. And Judas throws the money down. And he runs out. And he doesn't stop to think about what he's done. He doesn't repent. He's not sorry. His failure becomes final because the next thing he does is he thinks, oh, there's no coming back from this. So he hangs himself, commits suicide, takes his own life. His failure was final. No coming back from that. Now, let's back up to the dinner. Jesus says to Judas, I know you're going to betray me. What you're going to do it quickly. Judas leaves. But then he looks at another disciple by the name of Peter. And Peter says, well, I'm not going to betray you. I'm going to be with you all the way to the end. I'm with you, Lord. I got your back. And Jesus looks at him and says, you think so? Well, you are going to betray me by denying me, not once, not twice, 3 times before the rooster crows. Peter says, no way. Well, they end the dinner. They go to the garden. When Judas comes with the men to arrest Jesus, Peter is there. Well, some things happen, but I'm not talking about those specific things. But Jesus ends up being beaten and scourged. And Peter is outside the area. And somebody says to him, hey, I know you. You were with Jesus. And Peter goes, nope, it wasn't me. First denial. He's in another part later on and somebody says, you're one of his disciples. I saw you. And he goes, no, it wasn't me. 2. And then finally, he's warming himself by a fire. And somebody says, you are one of his disciples. And he swears, no, I swear I don't know the man. I don't know him. And immediately the rooster crows. Now, Judas betrayed Jesus. He failed. Peter betrayed Jesus by denying him. He's failed. But instead of making his failure final like Judas did, Peter runs outside the city gate and he falls down and he starts weeping and he's crying and he is so sorry that he has failed. And in his heart of hearts, my guess is he's saying, oh, whereas Judas was saying, there's no coming back from this, Peter was saying, if there's a way back, help me find it. Well, Jesus is crucified. He dies. 3 days later, the story tells us, he's resurrected. He eventually gathers back with his disciples and he says, let's go for a walk. Talking to Peter. Let's go for a walk. And as they're walking, he says, Peter, do you love me? Peter says, Lord, you know I love you. He says, then feed my sheep. And they walk a little farther and Jesus goes, Peter, do you love me? And he says, Lord, it's the second time you've asked me this. Yes, the answer is the same. I love you. He says, feed my sheep. They're walking along a little bit and Jesus goes, you know what, Peter, there's something I've been meaning to ask you. I know this is the 3rd time that I've asked you this, but do you love me? And Peter says, Lord, you know I love you. He says, then feed my lambs. Why is that? 3 times he denied him. 3 times Jesus gave him a chance to restore himself. Hear what I'm saying. Whether you believe the story or not, listen to the lesson. Judas said the failure is final. There's no way back. And he took his life. Peter said, if there's a way back, Help me find it. And he found it. He betrayed him 3 times, denied him 3 times, but 3 times he got the chance to say, "Yes, Lord, I love you." Failure is only final in how we deal with the aftermath of the failure. It's all about character. It's all about that if there is a way back, I want to find it. Well, I have good news for you this weekend. As we prepare for Memorial Day, you may be remembering your failures, but you know what? You're still here because you found a way back. Your life's not over, and neither are your victories. May God bless you. This is my prayer.